word Behar is written with a bait, a hay, and a resh. The bait represents the house, but it can also represent the womb. Did you know the womb becomes the house or the repository for seed? The Hebrew letter hay indicates something's about to happen. Pay attention here. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, hey, pay attention. It means revelation is in front of you if you're willing. Now, a lot of times, Father will have revelation right in front of your eyes, and you can't see it. So when I see Father revealing stuff to me, and I'm looking around, and everybody else has got that glazed over look, I start looking for a ditch, because when the blind's leading the blind, there's a ditch somewhere close by. Hello? Are you with me? Well, if you'll break the word Behar down, bait is house or womb, hay, revelation, resh is head or beginning, the chief one. So when you break that word Behar down, listen to this, you could literally say the light or the word of Yahweh reveals who is the head of the house. Are you with me? Well, since it has the same gematria as the Hebrew word for or, and Yahweh's telling us on top of the mountain, do you think maybe Father had a spotlight when he stepped out on top of the mountain? Do you think that all of creation was like a spotlight that funneled the light right there on top of the being that was on the crown or the pinnacle of that mountain, so you would have absolutely no doubt who's the head of the house that you were looking at? I don't think the children of Israel had any doubt who was on top of the mountain. Now, if you go over to Mount Sinai in Egypt on that peninsula there, you'll see someone else who's a false light. Well, let's look a little bit further at the Hebrew letter tet. And let's see if we can see an indication that maybe there has been an encounter with the serpent on top of the mountain. We've looked at the hidden message, a little bit of it, of the word tet and the serpent. I want to continue to look a little bit further at the title of the Torah portion, the word Behar. Now, if you go back with me to Leviticus chapter 25, let's look in verse 1. I'm only going to read this one verse, and I'm not taking it out of context. I'm going to read the verse, and we're going to break it up and look at it in a couple of these words, and then we'll interject some other verses throughout this particular study. And Yahweh spake unto Moshe in Mount Sinai, saying, well, the word spake you need to pay attention to. It is the word dabar. Are you with me? Have you ever thought about breaking that word up? What does the word dabar mean in Hebrew? Word. Take the dalet off the front of it, and you have the word abar, eber, which means one who's going to cross over or stands in front of. Well, it is the word of Yahweh that when you put the dalet in front of it, that becomes the door to crossing over. Are you following me? So when Yahweh spake to Moshe in Behar, in the mountain, it was at the place known as Sinai. Vayidabar Yahweh el Moshe Behar Sinai Lamor. Well, again, the Hebrew letter bait means in or on. And of course it does, as we alluded to earlier, it represents the house, specifically the house or the dwelling place of Yah. Well, that's what Mount Sinai was. It became the dwelling place of Yah. As a metaphor, I said earlier, and I want to reemphasize it, it can also reference the womb again as the dwelling place of the seed. Now let's look at the Hebrew letter, the Hebrew word bait, and see how it is actually spelled. Not only is it one individual letter, but if you were to spell the letter out and make a word, it's written with a bait, a yod, and a tav. Yod, dude. Bait 2, yod 10, tav 400. Total of 400. I throw those things out occasionally just to see if you're really paying attention or not. So the tally of the three individual letters is 412. Now this gets really interesting. Now we're talking about on the mountain, Behar. Well, 412 is the numerical equivalent of another word that's seen back in Genesis. It seems like everything begins in Genesis, doesn't it? Isaiah 46:10 says he's declared the end, our day. From what? Bereshit, the beginning. Do you think maybe that's one of the reasons that so much insight is being shared with you regarding the book of beginnings? Because it's relevant to the end day. If you want to know what's about to happen, Go back to the book of beginnings. If you want to find out how to handle the serpent, go back to the book of beginnings. Are you with me? Well, that numerical value, 412, is the same as the word found in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. Strong's number 8378. The word is ta'avah, and it's translated as pleasant. When Eve saw the tree and the fruit that the tree was bearing, she said, "Ooh, it's pleasant." Well, the word ta'avah literally infers a lustful desire or a craving. Are you following me? Well, this is talking about this tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she's making the declaration. This thing stirred up something on the inside of her, and I've got news for you. Your eyes become a gateway. Are you listening to me? Now, I can communicate with you by virtue of the spoken word, but body language speaks just as powerful. And at this particular juncture, the serpent had spoken to her, but now she was looking at evidently body language that was demonstrating something that caused that craving to be stirred up on the inside of her. This was more than just an apple hanging on a tree. Are you following me? Now, let me just make sure that we clarify. It happened to be the same place where the tree of life was located, and they were presented with a choice. They chose the wrong seed. This is Gan Eden. Gan Eden is, if you were to look at the way Father designed the earth like he did the tabernacle, it was supposed to represent the dwelling place or the house of Yah. So Eden would have been the house. Gan Eden would have been the bedroom for the husband and wife. So this was the intimate place. Are y'all following me? It was here in the intimate place that was supposed to be where intimacy between the husband and wife, sexual passion, was supposed to be contained in that area. Now listen to me. Yahweh had warned Adam and Eve regarding contact with this tree. He warned them back in Genesis chapter 2. I want you to go back to chapter 2 of Genesis with me, and I want to look at some things. Remember, we're going to let our fingers do the walking this evening. In Genesis chapter 2, Father, in verse 7, forms the man out of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Now, let me just tell you what the breath of life is in case you don't know. It's a well-known fact that every Hebrew letter, 22 total, not counting the 5 final forms of those letters, is equivalent to the number of chromosomes in the body. It's also comparable to the DNA helix that forms the very life of man. And so what happens when Yahweh breathed the breath of lives into the nostrils of this Adam, he's literally breathing into him his own word, his own seed. Are you following me? Amen. Well, Adam was a spiritual entity that at this particular juncture in time had not suffered corruption in any form. He used 100% of his mental faculties. And when Father breathed his word into him, all of the living being that was enveloped into the word of Yah, literally the way that it's rendered, he breathed the neshama, the breath of lives, into him. He not only breathed into him his word, but I'm convinced that he breathed into him an understanding or perception to see something and to perceive it's more than just casually glance at it. Amen. Are you following me? Adam knew the Torah. And you find immediately upon being created and put into the garden, Adam starts naming creation. So he puts into action the very thing that had been breathed into him. Are you following me? What was he doing? He was reduplicating Yahweh in the earth, creating, speaking things into existence. It's an indicator that he knew the Torah. Now, let's look at the next verse. It says, Yahweh planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. I want you to look at the word garden. It's the word gan, Strong's number 1588, written in Hebrew with a gimel and a nun. And then look at the word Eden. Strong's number 5731, written with an ayin, a dalet, and a nun. It's interesting, both of those words have the Hebrew letter nun on the end of it, and the nun references everything that pertains to life. So everything that could pertain to life could be found in the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. The Strong's Concordance renders the word Eden as delight, but it's far more than that. Let's play with those words a little bit, doing what 2 Timothy 2:15 says. If you look first, we're going to come back to Gan, Gimel, Nun, but let's look first at Eden, Ayin, Dalet, Nun. If you play with that just a little bit and massage it some, and I'm not talking about adding to or taking away, we're just examining this thing. Well, the ayin, the Hebrew letter ayin, is pictographically represented by the eye, and it means to perceive. But it means more than just to look at it. It means once I look at it, I finally am able to see it. I understand it. You follow me? It means that I have experience now from having seen it. Well, if you look at it, you'll see that it's followed by the Dalet Nun. Dalet Nun forms the Hebrew word Dan, or Dan, and that means judgment. All right? Now remember that. Because Eden is a place where the eye sees and understands judgment. You understand what I just said? We'll look a little bit further. Now, let's look at the word for garden. Strong's number 1588. The word is gan. As we said earlier, it is translated as garden, but there's an etymological derivative of the word gan that you're familiar with. And if you've ever studied biology or science, this word is familiar because the word gene, as in gene pool, gene structure, you follow me? What patterns your children that follow after you or what you were patterned after, you see that? It has the same root letters, gene pool, gene, and that word gene literally means something that's produced, the source of where things are born of or born out of or produced by. Now there's another closely related word to that word gene or gan, and it's the word gani or genie, and that word means shame and disgrace. Remember the genie in the bottle, the God that brings shame and disgrace? Adam and Eve knew the moment that they partook of the fruit of that tree that they would see their genes, those that were produced from them, brought to shame. Adam and Eve knew. Eve might have been seduced. Adam was not ignorant. Adam had the word breathed into him. Adam knew the moment that they took of the fruit of the tree of carnal knowledge that everything that was patterned after them, all of the genes that were inherent in his loins, would be corrupt and brought to shame and disgrace because of their actions. Now there's some even more profound mystery hidden in that word for Eden. Remember, Strong's has it translated as delight, but it can also be translated as a time period, to reckon, to count. So this was known, Eden would have been known as the garden of appointed times, a place for reckoning or counting the divine appointments. Are you with me? And it's interesting here that it connects us to this 50-day season that we're currently in, called the counting of the Omer. The garden of appointed times would have been the place for the counting of the days, which ends, the Omer season ends after 7 times 7 weeks, or 49 days. And it's interesting, in this Torah portion, you have a reference to the Yovel of the Jubilee season, 7 times 7 or a week of years, 49 years, the 50th year being the Jubilee season. So Yahweh's even connecting more of the Torah portion right here at the inception of this encounter in Gan Eden between the seed. Now, if you want more of this teaching, you're going to have to tune into the next track of this CD. Hope you've enjoyed it thus far. Shalom Aleichem. Again, it's a pleasure to be back with you. We're looking at the Torah portion for this week. It's entitled Behar, in the mountain. And we were studying how there was such a powerful connection to the fact that this was the 9th Torah portion in the book called Leviticus or Vayikra. And number 9 and the Hebrew letter tet are interchangeable. They're